and we fitted the lies before the show. Backstage light does a particular cruelty to fabric. It reveals every pucker and forgiven sin. My name is Armin. I'm a cutter at Mason Fever, which is a French way of saying I take other people's dreams and make them fit. The man I loved was Dante, a paramedic who kept the city from admitting how close it lives to panic. He slept when the sirens let him and cooked when the stove needed applause. We rented a top-floor walk-up where pigeons had opinions and the radiator remembered wars. We taped 3 rules inside the glass of a picture frame near the door. Be home when you say, don't rehearse breakups, kiss before sleep. We didn't write anything about creative directors who fall in love with their reflections, sponsors who think influence is a tailoring measurement, or models who can make a fitting feel like a confession. Fashion Week consumes calendars like kindling. We were mounting Molten, a collection Fever said would make people consider fire a fabric. Our creative director, Lucian, had cheekbones that made stylists sentimental and a permanent 5 o'clock confession. He knew how to talk to clothes like they could talk back. When he arrived in the atelier the first morning, he touched the bodice of Look 18 and closed his eyes as if listening for a pulse. Do not let this dress apologize, he told me, and then smiled as if kindness were fabric you could order by the roll. Dante met him first. I'd asked Dante to swing by with empanadas because the interns had already started eating anxiety for lunch. He came in uniform, green like mercy, and every head turned because nothing we cut in that room would ever be as noble as the habit of someone who kneels on asphalt and says breathe. Lucian crossed the floor like a camera had asked him to. You bring sustenance, he said to Dante, all charm and vowels. Dante grinned in that small way he has when someone mistakes him for a symbol. I bring lunch, he said. Lucian touched my shoulder like I belonged to the dress and therefore to him. Dante saw the touch, filed it in the correct drawer, and slid a pastry into my hand like a contract. Our sponsor for the show was a conglomerate that made perfume and mistakes. Their emissary was a man named Victor who wore navy like a compliment to himself. He came with seating charts, budget questions disguised as curiosity, and a watch that had decided to be a sculpture. He watched fittings like a scout for sin. Our largest client lands at noon on show day, he said, and expects magic at 3. He looked at me because cutters are the ones who have to translate magic into math. Lucian looked at Victor with the politeness one uses for landlords and wolves and said, we are making lava patient. Intrigue performs best at fittings. The first one that mattered was for Remai, our closing model, famous for being photographed in clothing that did not technically exist. Remai is tall in the way time is tall. He speaks in half sentences because people give him the rest. When he stood on the riser in Look 28, molten satin, a train that had been taught to be obedient, I saw what Lucian had meant. The dress had a spine. I pinned at the hip to teach it manners. Is it supposed to feel like a decision? Remai asked. Everything you wear is a decision, I said. He looked down at me with those patient eyes models get when they've stopped expecting kindness. You're careful, he said. The city makes me arrogant, I said, which is how I flirt when I'm tired. We were adding last-minute bonding to a corset the evening Lucian asked me, can you stay? His tone suggested an answer. The atelier had thinned. Even the steamers sounded like they wanted to go home. I stayed. We took the corset apart, then put it back together the way you put back together an apology that matters. He stood too close while I stitched. My jaw felt his breath, warm as an opinion. You work like you believe the garment will be faithful, he said. I work like it will be worn, I answered. He laughed softly. And the difference is, I looked up. There's always a zipper, I said. He touched my cheekbone with a fingertip the weight of a wish. It wasn't a kiss. It was worse. A promise written on skin you can't remove. I told Dante with needle honesty. We sat on our fire escape with 2 beers and our night's humidity. He listened like he was monitoring a patient with a steady heart. "Do you want him?" he asked, no drama, just triage. "I want the room he stands in," I said. My body betrayed me by meaning it. He nodded like he'd expected that and disliked how right he'd been. "Don't bring his room home," he said. "Our bed is small on purpose." Victor became a schedule you couldn't ignore. "Teasers at 11, he said. "A backstage walkthrough with press at 1. Our client wants to take Ramai to lunch." He moved names around a seating spreadsheet like chess pieces with Instagram accounts. He sent me 2 emails about whether Look 28's train could be longer and then one about whether it could be shorter. He began hovering during fittings like he had earned that verb. I moved my pins faster. Ramai stayed late one night under the pretense of heel practice. He wore a narrow slingback like an argument so I could adjust the balance of the train. The atelier felt like a confessional with fluorescent lighting. "Sit," I told him after the 3rd circuit, "or you'll make the fabric grudge." He sank into the low couch like beauty punished him. He watched my hands make micro-decisions at the hem and said, "You're calmer when you're lying." I didn't flinch. "I'm calmer when I'm pinning." He smiled with half his mouth. "Is there a difference?" He reached down and grazed my wrist when I moved the train aside. For one suspended second, the dress ceased to be a dress. He had that gravity some men carry, the one that says the room is optional and you will still be seen. I stood, and the space between standing and letting him touch me again was the size of an affair. I didn't tell Dante that part because humiliation prefers to age before pouring. Instead, I pulled him into bed when we both should have been sleeping, and he put his palm on my throat with the gentleness that reminds you this is your body and you are the one living in it. "Here?" he asked, voice low, and I said yes, in the tone of men choosing to stay. My back met the sheets like a confession. We were not dramatic, we were precise. On the morning of the show, the city woke up addicted to light. We loaded racks into vans and pretended we could control time. The venue was a decommissioned subway station with tiles that had learned to admit secrets. The runway was a white line that promised to escort the best mistakes to safety. Dante texted a photo from his ambulance at dawn, a view from the bridge where the river looked like a satin bolt. "Don't cut it crooked," he wrote. I sent back a scissor emoji and a heart. Press walkthroughs are theater for people who rehearse sincerity. Lucian described molten with adjectives that made even me want to believe. Ramai did his practice walk like the day had hired him for gravity. Victor buzzed about LVMH noses and a prince's cousin who wanted to bring late appetites and early photographers. When the first guests arrived, the air thinned into something sellable. I stationed myself at the end of the lineup, clipboard convincing, pins unholy. Lucian kissed me in the shadow under the stairs 5 minutes before first look. He didn't ask, he just arrived. The mouth he used was the one he gives to cameras, a performance of sincerity with a spine only softer. He pressed me against the cool tile until I had to remember we'd left the scissors somewhere dangerous. His hand at my waist was persuasive, his whisper was worse. "After," he said, "I was breathless and stupid, which is a syndrome." "After," I said. We separated because a model in Look 4 needed a hook repaired, and because the music had started threatening to be loud. I told myself I could be 2 people for an hour, the cut that holds and the man who might be a story. The runway devoured the collection in the correct order. Look 18 apologized to no one. The audience pretended they had always believed. Ramai, last out, took the corner in the molten satin like he had learned the physics of desire. The train obeyed and then, because fabric contains spite as well as memory, caught at the edge of a light box and tugged. The room inhaled the way rooms do when they want blood. Ramai didn't break. He lifted the edge of the train with 2 fingers like a prince refusing to be late and kept walking. Photographers captured the lift. Twitter rehearsed admiration. Backstage, I relearned how to breathe. After is never quiet at Fashion Week. It is a collage trying to become a sentence. Victor was drunk on relief and proximity. He hugged Lucian like prophet. He kissed both Remai's cheeks noisily and left a voicemail for someone named Darling about the miracle of molten constraints. Dante texted, "How did lava behave?" I sent a photo of the train swan-necked on a hangar and wrote, "We survived gravity." He replied, "You always do." I read it out loud to my chest and then the rest of me. Lucian found me by the steamer with a look that asked me to remember tile and promises. He motioned with his chin toward the service corridor that smelled like concrete and campaigns. I followed because desire often looks like professionalism when you're overtired. In the corridor, he backed me to the wall in an economy of steps. This kiss was not a rehearsal. His hands were sure like men are sure when the room has chosen them, and they believe it had no choice. He tasted like champagne and residual panic, and I answered in a language I pretend not to speak. We stopped because my phone vibrated like a moral with Dante's name. "Be home when you say," the screen reminded me, and guilt is an excellent translator. Lucian saw the name, read the rule in my face, and did the elegant thing. He stepped back. "You will tell him," he said softly, which is either kindness or arrogance. "Yes," I said, wrecked and half respectful. I didn't get the chance to confess on my timeline because intrigue likes insurance. Victor waited by the exit with Remai, both of them smiling the way important people do when they're about to perform generosity. "Quick toast at the sponsor suite," Victor said, as if I belonged there. "Bring your cutter," he told Lucian, which is what men say when they mean bring the talent you can dispose of. The suite was a glass room with a view of a city faking humility. Champagne worked the crowd like a PR intern. Victor lifted a flute and made a speech about innovation and appetite. Then he said, casually cruel, "And to the star who kept the dress from suing us," and kissed Remai on the mouth longer than a toast requires. The room made a sound too polite to be surprise. Remai's eyes slid to me over Victor's shoulder while that public kiss finished its argument. There was apology in them and also the particular selfishness of men who are always the last look. After he moved toward me in a small apology radius. "I didn't know he was going to," he started. "Of course you did," I said, and then wanted to bite my own tongue. He winced, still beautiful. "It's a different room," he said. "Some rooms pay rent." He touched my sleeve, a near spasm. The touch said, "I see you." It also said, "I am practiced at choosing the door that opens." I went home alone because the only way to end the day was to choose one thing uncomplicated. Dante was at the table with soup, 2 bowls, 3 spoons because he'd lost one and was improvising. He looked at me and his face tried 2 expressions and kept the kinder. I told him everything with the economy you use for wounds. Where, when, how deep, what stitches might hold. He sat back and did the paramedic's silent math, triaging a scene that was his and not. "Do you want him?" he asked. I swallowed the tired lie and said, "I wanted to be chosen by a room that chooses no one." He nodded once. "Then don't pretend betrayal is a symptom," he said. "It's a choice. So is forgiveness." He took my wrist with a tenderness that made me want to put my face in his shirt. "Come here," he said, and I did, and we kissed in the way people kiss when both have seen worse and plan to see better. He didn't punish me with distance. He punished me with accuracy. "Here?" he asked, palms settling at my throat, and I said yes, like a man climbing back into his own life. We made love quietly because the walls like to narrate. When it was over, he put his forehead to mine and whispered, "Be home when you say," as if the phrase could be retroactive. I resigned, not from the house, that would have been dramatic, but from Lucian's orbit. I asked for work at the men's line 2 floors down where pattern pieces behave and ambition wears fewer rings. Lucian called me into his office with those windows that flatter untruths. "You will be bored," he said. "I will be employed," I answered. He touched my shoulder as if he had earned it and said, "I do not like being told no." I said, You like being told yes more than you like keeping people. He smiled because it was true. Ramai sent a message through an assistant, coffee. I wrote back, water. He came to the cafe near the hospital where Dante sometimes grabbed sandwiches and let the sirens pass. Ramai looked smaller without lights, a trick you learn after curtain. Victor and I are nothing, he said as if anticipating a story I wasn't writing. You and I were nearly something, I said, which hurt both of us correctly. He touched his lower lip as if it were new. I liked how you pinned, he said. You made the cloth feel accountable. I smiled, not kind, not cruel. Be accountable, I said, and left him with his glass of water and the reflection he was always going to choose. Victor survived the season because money knows CPR. Lucian turned molten into fragrance and sold out by Thursday. I cut suits that told the truth gently. Dante worked nights that taught him to believe in mornings. We added a fourth line inside the picture frame. Don't tailor the story to fit the mistake. When I wrote it, Dante kissed the corner of my mouth like consent and said, "New rule, you're allowed to outgrow rooms." Sometimes, when the city admits its loneliness, I walk past the decommissioned station where we made lava obedient. I run my hand along the tile, and the tile remembers shoes and camera flashes, and the way a train's edge can grab a train. I think of Lucian adjusting language with his mouth, of Ramai balancing choice and choreography, of Victor collecting proximity and calling it patronage. Then I go home, up the 5 flights my legs have tailored to, and find Dante asleep in the way only the useful ever sleep. I place my palm on his chest to count him, to inventory our day's returns. He stirs and murmurs here, into the pillow, and I say yes. And the room, small, rented, stubborn, fits us again without pin or apology. If someone asks what Fashion Week taught me, I don't say glamour or hunger or how to hide a zipper. I say the thing cutters know that lovers forget. Fit is a decision repeated until it looks like fate. We fitted the lies before the show and wore them briefly. Then we went home when we said we would, kissed before sleep, and learned which seams needed letting out so 2 men could keep breathing inside something they didn't plan, but chose anyway, over and over, with hands that know the difference between repair and pretense.